Fiancé banned my little daughter from our wedding ceremony because she has no role, but his 4 kids are included. So we're in the middle of planning this big wedding. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of overwhelming, but also exciting, you know? Adam and I have been together for a while, and blending our families has been a wild ride. He's got 4 kids from his 2 previous relationships, twin girls who are 7, another daughter who's a preteen, and his youngest, a 5-year-old son. I've got my little girl, who's 5 and just started kindergarten. So, yeah, we've got a lot of kids in the mix. Honestly, until now, things had been going pretty smoothly with the kids. Adam's always been big on treating everyone equally, which is a huge deal for me. When you're blending families, that's what you hope for, right? So, we've been managing this whole one big happy family thing pretty well until the wedding planning kicks off. We're going through all the usual stuff like venues, food, colors, whatever, and we finally get to talking about roles for the kids. Adam's super excited about having his son be the ring bearer, and he's already picked his 3 daughters as the flower girls. When he first mentions it, I'm like, okay, that sounds cute. But then it hits me. My daughter's not included. Now I get it. Adam's got more kids, and maybe he just hadn't thought about it. But still, I want my daughter to be a part of the wedding too. She's my kid, and it would mean the world to her to be included in some way. So I bring it up casually like, hey, wouldn't it be nice if my daughter could be one of the flower girls too? Adam doesn't even think about it, just straight up says, no. At first, I think I must have misheard him, like, why would he just say no? So I try again just to make sure, and he repeats, no, 3's enough. I don't get it. We're talking about our wedding, and I'm asking for my kid to be a part of it, just like his kids are. It's not like I'm asking to rearrange everything or kick his kids out of the wedding or anything. I just want to add one more flower girl. So I ask him, why not? It's not that big a deal, right? And he just shrugs and says, it wouldn't work. That's it. No explanation, no discussion, just, it wouldn't work. I'm trying to keep calm because I don't want this to turn into an argument, especially since we're still in the middle of planning everything else. But I feel like he's brushing me off over something that should be an easy yes. The thing is, my daughter is at that age where she's all about princesses and dressing up. You know, like if she sees a fluffy dress or a tiara, she's obsessed. So being a flower girl would be a huge deal for her. And it's not just for her, it's for me too. I want her to feel like she's part of this big day, especially since she's going to be stepping into this blended family. I try to explain this to Adam, but he's just sitting there giving me this blank look. I can see he's getting annoyed, but I keep pushing a little because it's important to me. I tell him that including her is a small thing that would make a big difference, but he just sighs and says, you're making this a big deal over nothing. All right, now I'm starting to get frustrated. It's like he's not even hearing me. I get that he's got more kids, and I totally respect that his kids are a big part of his life, but it's not like I'm asking for the world here. I'm just asking for a spot for my daughter, one of the flower girls. I mean, if this was any other event, he'd be cool with it, but for some reason, he's shutting me down hard on this. By this point, I'm starting to feel a little hurt. It's like he's making it a his kids versus my kid thing, which isn't what I'm going for at all. I'm not even trying to make it complicated. I just want to feel like my daughter matters as much as his kids do on this day that's supposed to be about us. But he's acting like I'm trying to start some family drama. So I decide to back off for now. I mean, maybe he's just stressed with all the planning, or maybe he's got some reason he doesn't want to explain right now. But in the back of my mind, I can't shake the feeling that he's being weirdly stubborn about this, and it's not sitting right with me. I try telling myself, it's just a flower girl spot, it's not the end of the world, but honestly, it's more than that to me. This is about my daughter feeling like she belongs in this new family. It's about her looking back on the wedding photos one day and feeling like she was a part of it. I don't want her to feel like she was on the sidelines at her mom's wedding just because she didn't happen to have the same dad as the other kids. So yeah, I'm stuck in this weird situation where something that should be simple is suddenly turning into a huge question mark. I'm trying not to let it spoil the excitement of the wedding planning, but every time I look at those flower girl dresses online, I just feel a little off. It's like I'm excited for the wedding, but there's this nagging feeling in the back of my mind like, why isn't this a no-brainer for him? I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it, but at the end of the day, I can't help but feel like this should have been an easy yes. The fact that it's not just has me second-guessing things a little, and I hate that. So, a few days go by after that whole awkward conversation with Adam about the flower girls. I decide to let it go for now, figuring maybe he just needs time to come around. But as luck would have it, that's when my daughter catches wind of the flower girl plans. She overhears the twins talking about being flower girls, and her face just lights up. I mean, she's a kid. Hearing about dresses and petals and getting to walk down an aisle? She's all in. She turns to me with this huge grin and says, "Mom, I want to be a flower girl too." Just the way she says it, like it's the most obvious thing in the world, makes my heart both happy and kinda, well, a little sad, honestly, because I know how that conversation went with Adam. Now, I could have just tried to distract her or pretend like it's not a big deal, but this isn't something she's gonna forget in 2 minutes. So I decide to try bringing it up with Adam again, thinking maybe this time he'll see how much it means to her, and to me, if I'm being honest. Later that evening, I sit him down. I tell him my daughter heard the twins talking and now she's really excited about being a flower girl too. And I'm hoping this will be the thing that finally clicks with him. Like, come on, seeing a little kid's excitement should melt anyone's heart, right? But nope, he just sighs and says, "Look, 3 flower girls are enough. We don't need more." I tell him she's really looking forward to it and that it would mean a lot, and he just gives me this look like I'm being pushy. I'm trying to keep my patience here because I know how sensitive weddings can be, and I don't want to start another argument. But seriously, I can't wrap my head around why he's so against it. I tell him again that it's a small thing that would make her really happy, and he just cuts me off saying, "It wouldn't work." I'm starting to see red at this point, but I try one last angle. I tell him that adding her isn't taking anything away from his kids, and that all the girls can do it together. No problem. But he just snaps at me saying, "It's not a big deal. You're making this way too serious." I feel like I just hit a wall. It's like he's not even considering how important this is to me or to her. It's like he's already decided she doesn't get to be a part of it no matter what. And then he drops this line on me, something like, "I thought we were past this my kid, your kid stuff." Excuse me? My kid, your kid? I'm literally sitting here trying to make my daughter feel like part of the family. Isn't that the whole point of us getting married? It's like he's turning it around on me, making me out to be the one who's causing division. I'm so thrown off by his attitude that I can't even process what he's saying for a minute. I manage to keep my cool enough to tell him, "She just wants to be part of this, Adam. It's not like she's asking for the world." But he just shakes his head, acting like I'm being unreasonable for even bringing it up. He says something about how I'm making this a hill to die on and acting immature. The way he says it, like I'm this big drama queen over something so silly, just cuts. I never expected him to react like this, and I certainly didn't think he'd make me feel guilty for standing up for my kid, so I just tell him, fine, I won't push it. But inside, I'm crushed. It feels like my daughter and I are just not as important as I thought we were. Later that night, my daughter asks me if she's going to get to be a flower girl, and I feel this lump in my throat. How am I supposed to tell her that her excitement doesn't matter, that she doesn't get to be included? So, I try to keep it simple. I tell her we're still working on the details, that nothing's set in stone yet, and she kind of nods, looking a bit disappointed. It breaks my heart. She's a little kid who just wants to feel special, and I feel like I'm failing her by not being able to make that happen. The twins, of course, are still all excited and talking about it nonstop, and every time they bring it up, I can see my daughter's face fall a little. She doesn't complain, but I can tell she's feeling left out, and that just eats at me. Over the next few days, I keep thinking about what happened, replaying it in my head. I wonder if I could have said something differently, tried harder to make him see my side, but honestly, it feels like he's already decided, and it feels like there's something deeper there, something he's not telling me. It's like he's got this line in his head, this unspoken rule that his kids are official, and my daughter's just there. It's hard not to feel bitter about it. I mean, we're supposed to be building a life together, right? A whole family. I want my daughter to feel like she belongs here, like she's not just tagging along in someone else's family. And Adam not wanting to include her in something as special as the wedding, the one day that's supposed to be about us all coming together, makes me question how things are really going to work once the honeymoon phase is over. But I tell myself it's just a minor setback, that maybe he's just stressed with the wedding planning, or maybe he's nervous and doesn't want things to get too complicated. So I try to push down those nagging doubts and focus on the other parts of the wedding that we're both excited about. Still, there's this knot in my stomach every time my daughter brings it up or looks at me with those big, hopeful eyes. I hate that I don't have a real answer for her, and I hate even more that Adam doesn't seem to care. It's a lousy feeling, honestly. I thought he'd see how much it mattered to me, to us as a family. But now I'm not so sure we're on the same page. After a few more days of awkward tension and no real resolution about the flower girl issue, I decide I can't keep quiet about it anymore. I've been bottling up my frustration, trying to convince myself that maybe I'm overthinking, or that maybe I just need to let it go. But every time I see my daughter's face drop a little, whenever the twins talk about being flower girls, I feel a pang of guilt. I shouldn't have to explain to her why she's not allowed to be a part of her own mom's wedding. So one night, after the kids are in bed, I bring it up with Adam again. I try to approach it calmly, like, look, I know you're set on the three girls, but I really think we should find a way to include my daughter too. Before I even get the whole sentence out, he lets out this big sigh, rolling his eyes, and says, "Are we seriously still talking about this?" That right there just lights a fuse in me. The eye roll, the tone, like I'm this annoying person for even caring about my kid's feelings. I try to stay calm and tell him that yes, I still think it's important, especially since my daughter is now looking forward to it. He cuts me off with, "It's just not necessary, all right? Why can't you let it go?" Let it go? I feel myself getting heated, but I try to explain myself. I tell him it's not just about the wedding. It's about her feeling like she's part of the family. This is supposed to be a day where we're all coming together, and leaving her out just doesn't sit right with me. But instead of understanding, he just snaps back with, "You're making this way bigger than it needs to be. They're just kids. They won't remember who was or wasn't a flower girl." Now I'm just shocked. I'm standing there trying to explain why this matters to me, and he's acting like I'm asking for the moon. I say, "It's a big deal to me, and it's a big deal to her. I don't understand why you're so against it." And that's when he says it, the line that makes everything crystal clear. "Maybe it's a big deal to you, but I think you're making it my kid versus your kid thing, and I don't appreciate that." I'm taken aback. My kid versus your kid? I didn't even know how to respond. I'm literally trying to include my daughter, not separate her. I tell him that I want her to feel like she belongs, like she's part of this family. And he just gives me this cold stare and says, "You're being toxic, you know that? It's this mentality that's creating problems." Creating problems? I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. I'm trying to figure out why he thinks that me asking for my daughter to be part of our wedding is somehow causing a divide. I tell him that, if anything, leaving her out is what's making things feel split. But he's not even listening. He just crosses his arms, standing there with this look of frustration, like I'm exhausting him. "You know what?" I say, finally feeling fed up. "I don't understand why you're acting like this is some massive request. She just wants to be included. Why can't you get that?" And then he laughs. Actually laughs. "Because it's ridiculous," he says. "It's ridiculous that you're so hung up on something as small as this. I'm treating everyone equally, but you're the one making it a big deal." I can't believe what I'm hearing. I tell him, it's not treating everyone equally if my daughter doesn't get to participate. This is our wedding. Shouldn't she feel like she's part of it too? But he just waves me off, saying I'm blowing things out of proportion. "Why are you choosing this hill to die on?" he snaps, like he's completely over it. "It's not fair to keep pushing and pushing just because you want her to have some special role. I'm not budging on this." Hearing that from him, I'm not budging. Just hits me in a way I didn't expect. It's like he's drawing a line in the sand over something I thought was a given. I thought we were a team. I thought he'd understand that including my daughter was just as important as including his kids. But he's looking at me like I'm the one who's being unreasonable. At this point, I'm hurt and honestly just mad. I tell him, if this is how you handle something so small, what's it going to be like when there's a bigger issue? How can I trust you to have my back if you're not willing to consider something that matters to me? He scoffs, crossing his arms even tighter. "Oh, don't make this into some grand thing about trust. This is about you not respecting my decisions." Now I'm the one rolling my eyes. I tell him it's not just his decision to make. This is our wedding, our family, and my daughter deserves to be included in something this important. But he's already checked out of the conversation. He shakes his head and says, "You're just being petty." That word, petty, stings more than I thought it would. I feel like he's dismissing me and everything I'm saying. Like my feelings and my daughter's feelings don't matter. So I tell him, if caring about my daughter's place in our family is petty, then maybe I am. But I'm not going to just sit back and let her feel left out. He just shakes his head like he's disappointed and says, "I can't believe you're making this into such a drama." I don't even know what to say anymore. I'm standing there, stunned, while he walks off like he's done with the conversation. I feel like I'm alone in this, fighting for something that shouldn't even be a fight. I thought planning this wedding would bring us closer, make us stronger as a family, but now all I feel is this growing distance between us, and it's honestly terrifying. As I stand there in the empty room, I realize this argument isn't just about a flower girl spot anymore. It's about how he sees me, how he sees my daughter, and maybe even how he sees our future. And for the first time, I start to wonder if maybe this isn't what I signed up for after all. After that fight, I start questioning everything. You know when you replay conversations in your head, trying to figure out if you're the one who missed something? Well, that's been me for the past few days. I keep going back to all the things Adam said, and honestly, it's making my stomach turn. It's not just the flower girl thing anymore. Sure, that's what started it, but now I'm thinking about the bigger picture. The way he brushed off my feelings, the way he laughed like I was being ridiculous for standing up for my kid, and that whole your kid versus my kids line he threw at me. It felt like a slap in the face. I keep wondering if he's reacting this way over something as small as adding one more flower girl, what's it going to be like when we hit actual problems? Blending families isn't easy, and we both knew that going into this. I figured we'd face challenges, but I thought we'd tackle them together. Now, though, I feel like I'm starting to see a side of him I didn't notice before. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. Over the next few days, every little thing starts standing out to me. Like when we're all hanging out with the kids, he's so quick to jump in and play with his kids, joke around, make them feel special. And don't get me wrong, that's great. I love that he's a good dad to them. But then I notice he's just distant with my daughter. Maybe I was blind to it before, but now it's all I can see. For example, his daughters will ask him something, even something silly like, "Can you help me with my doll's hair?" And he'll go all in, doing whatever they need, laughing, making them feel seen. My daughter will ask him a similar thing, and it's like he barely hears her. Just a quick, yeah, and maybe a distracted pat on the head before he goes back to whatever he was doing. I've tried to ignore it, thinking I'm reading too much into it, but now that I'm looking, it's pretty clear. And here's the thing. My daughter's starting to notice too. She hasn't said anything outright, but I can tell. She looks a little sad when he doesn't pay attention to her, or when he laughs extra loud at something one of his kids says but barely acknowledges her. She's only 5, but kids aren't dumb. They know when they're being left out. And as her mom, it just guts me. I keep trying to remind myself that he's stressed with wedding planning, that maybe he's just tired or preoccupied. But then I remember his words. I'm not budging on this, like his decision was final, no room for compromise or understanding. And that hurts. Because I thought marriage was supposed to be about finding common ground, about supporting each other. But here I am, feeling like I'm fighting this battle on my own and he's on the other side. I think back to how things were when we first got together. He was charming, caring, the kind of guy who made me believe in this whole blended family dream. He'd say things like, "Our family will be one big team," or "I'll always treat your daughter like my own." And I believed him because that's what I wanted for her. A dad who'd love her, make her feel safe and valued. But now I'm starting to think that was just talk. The other day, we were at the park with all the kids, and I watched him playing with his son, lifting him up, spinning him around, making him laugh. Meanwhile, my daughter was off to the side, playing in the sand by herself. She looked over a few times, probably hoping he'd invite her in, maybe include her too, but he didn't even look her way. And that's when it hit me. This isn't just about the flower girl thing. This is about her feeling like part of his family, and right now, she's not. I try to bring it up again, one more time, thinking maybe if I approach it gently, he'll understand where I'm coming from. But as soon as I start, he just shuts it down. He's got this tone like he's annoyed with me, like I'm making his life difficult by even suggesting that my daughter should feel included. He tells me, "You're reading too much into it, and can we please move on?" Like I'm the one being irrational. And that's when I start to seriously wonder if this is what I want. Is this the guy I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with? Someone who brushes off my concerns, laughs when I try to stand up for my kid, and refuses to even consider compromising? I wanted this wedding to be the start of something beautiful for us. A new chapter, where we all come together as one family. But instead, it's feeling more like a warning sign. It's not an easy thing to admit to myself, but I can't ignore the feeling in my gut anymore. I want a partner who'll stand by me, who'll make my daughter feel like she belongs just as much as his kids do. But every conversation we have about this makes me feel like that's never going to happen with him. I start thinking about the future. Holidays, birthdays, big family events. Will it always be his kids and my kid? Am I signing my daughter and myself up for a life where she's always left on the sidelines, where her place in the family is always second to his kids? And honestly, I don't want that for her. I don't want her growing up feeling like she's somehow less than just because her mom didn't marry her dad. She deserves to feel loved, included, and valued. And right now, I don't think Adam can give her that. So yeah, I've been having some major second thoughts and it's tearing me up inside. Because I love him, I do, but I can't ignore what's right in front of me. And I can't keep hoping he'll change when every sign is pointing to the fact that he won't. For now, I'm just taking things day by day, trying to figure out what's best for my daughter and me. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like maybe this isn't the happily ever after I thought it would be. So here I am, days away from what's supposed to be my wedding, and I'm realizing that maybe, just maybe, this isn't what I thought it would be. It's honestly heartbreaking because I didn't get this far to throw it all away. I've invested my heart, my time, my dreams of what a family could be. But then again, I didn't sign up for a life where my daughter would be treated like she's on the sidelines, or where every little thing about her inclusion would turn into a fight. A few nights ago, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, just turning everything over in my head. I kept asking myself, can I really do this? Can I marry someone who doesn't seem to care how this affects my daughter? And I realized that if I'm having these questions now, that's a massive red flag. I mean, yeah, wedding jitters are normal, but this isn't about nerves. This is about my kid, my little girl who's looking up to me to make choices that keep her safe and happy. The next morning, I wake up with this heavy feeling in my chest. Adam's already up, in the kitchen making coffee like it's any other day. I stand there just watching him for a second, wondering if he's even feeling the same doubt that I am. But the truth is, he doesn't seem bothered. He's just going about his day, like everything's fine, like we didn't have some pretty intense arguments about this whole flower girl situation, or like he didn't tell me flat out that my feelings were petty and ridiculous. I realize I can't keep this all bottled up anymore. I have to get it out, or it's going to eat me alive. So I take a deep breath and sit down across from him at the table. I don't even know where to start, so I just say, "We need to talk." He looks up, surprised. "About what?" he asks, like he doesn't already know. So, I lay it out. I tell him I've been having second thoughts. I tell him that this whole thing with my daughter, the way he's been so against including her, has made me question if this is really the right choice. I say that it's not just about a flower girl role, it's about how he sees us as a family, and right now, it feels like he's not willing to meet me halfway. He sits there for a minute, and I can see his jaw tighten. "I can't believe you're letting this ruin everything," he says finally, and his tone's sharp like he's annoyed with me. "We're so close to the wedding, and you're just... what? Second-guessing everything because of one little thing?" That phrase, "one little thing," just about sets me off. I tell him that it's not one little thing to me or to my daughter. I explain, probably for the 100th time, that this is about making her feel like she's part of this family, like she's valued and included. But he just shakes his head, like I'm missing the point. "Look," he says, leaning back in his chair, "I'm not saying I don't care about your daughter, but I already made decisions for this wedding, and I don't feel like I should have to change everything just because she wants to be a flower girl." There it is, the final nail in the coffin. It's not about my daughter, it's about his decisions, his way, his unwillingness to even consider bending for her or for me. I realize that this is how it'll be every time there's something important to me that he doesn't want to deal with. He'll shut it down, brush it off, or make me feel like I'm asking for the world when really, all I want is a place for my daughter. At this point, I feel this weird calm come over me. It's like everything I need to know is right in front of me. I don't want to keep arguing or begging him to understand where I'm coming from. If he doesn't get it now, he's never going to get it. I look at him and say, "Adam, if we can't agree on something as simple as making my daughter feel included, how are we going to handle the big stuff? How can I marry you, knowing this is how it'll always be?" He just looks at me like he's at a loss for words, but not in a way that shows he understands. More like he's fed up with me, like I'm wasting his time. He doesn't say anything for a moment, then finally just mutters, "I can't believe you're throwing this all away over one little thing." Hearing him say that again, I feel my heart break a little. But I know I'm making the right decision. If he can't see why this matters to me, why it matters for my daughter, then what's the point of going through with this wedding? I stand up, my hands shaking a little, and I tell him, I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing what's best for my daughter and me. And then I walk away. Packing up my things and telling my daughter that we're not going to be living here anymore is probably the hardest part. She doesn't fully understand, but she asks me, "Is Adam still going to be my daddy?" And that question just about tears me in half. I tell her, "No, sweetie, but we're going to be okay." She's young, so I know she'll be all right, and I know I'm making the right choice. But it doesn't make it hurt any less. Walking away from a relationship is always hard, but it's harder when you had all these hopes built up around it. Hopes for a happy family, for a fresh start, for a real partnership. The thing is, deep down, I know that I can't settle for someone who doesn't see me or my daughter as a priority. We both deserve more than that. And if Adam can't handle something as small as making my daughter feel included in a simple wedding role, then what else is he going to shut us out of? As I close the door behind me, I feel a strange mix of relief and sadness. Part of me still wishes things could have been different, that he could have seen what I was asking for as something small but important. But I also know that wishing for someone to change isn't the same as them actually changing. And right now, my daughter and I need someone who's all in, not someone who's only half there. So yeah, that's where I ended up, choosing my daughter over a man who couldn't see her worth. I don't know what's next for us, but at least I know I made the right decision. Update. It's been about a week since I called off the wedding. I've been trying to settle back into some kind of normal, mostly focusing on my daughter and keeping my mind off everything that went down with Adam. But then, just as I'm starting to feel like I can breathe again, he shows up at my place. I open the door, and there he is, looking all serious, like he's got something important to say. My heart's pounding because I honestly don't know what to expect. Part of me wants to slam the door in his face, but the other part of me, well, I guess I still want to believe he can change, even after everything. So I let him in, telling myself I'll give him a chance to talk, to explain himself. We sit down, and he starts off with this big sigh, like he's carrying the weight of the world. He says, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realized maybe I was a little too harsh." He says he misses us and regrets the way things ended, and for a second, I feel this tiny spark of hope. Maybe he's finally seeing things from my perspective, but then he starts adding these little conditions, turning the apology into a list of things he'd want me to change. He says stuff like, "I just don't want you to keep pushing these issues about your daughter. It's exhausting to feel like everything has to revolve around her." He actually says that. Right there, I feel my heart sink. I tell him, "She's my daughter, Adam. She's 5. Of course, she's going to be a priority." He just nods, doing that sighing thing again, like I'm being difficult. Then he goes, "I get that, but you have to meet me halfway here. You have to stop bringing up all these issues about her feeling included in every little thing. It just makes things more complicated than they need to be." I'm sitting there, stunned, and trying to process what he's saying. He's apologizing, but only if I'm willing to agree to not push for my daughter anymore. He says things like, "I want us to be happy together, but you need to understand that we can't keep revisiting this stuff every time she feels left out." At this point, I'm getting pretty fed up, but I try one more time to get through to him. I say, "Adam, it wasn't just little stuff to me. This was about making her feel like she's part of our family. I want us to be a real team, not just me and her on one side and you and your kids on the other." He just looks at me like he's waiting for me to finish my speech. And then he says, "See, this is what I mean. You're too focused on making everything perfect for her, like it has to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be so extreme. Just let things happen naturally." "Let things happen naturally?" I repeat, trying not to raise my voice. "So naturally she's excluded? Naturally she just takes a back seat to your kids?" Adam shifts in his seat, clearly annoyed now, and he says, "It's not about her being excluded. It's about you not needing to control everything. Just let her be part of things when it works, but stop trying to force it." At that point, I feel this weight settle in my chest. I realize he's never going to see her as part of his family, not in the way that matters. He's so focused on making sure his kids stay comfortable that he can't even consider what it would mean for my daughter to feel like she belongs too. He goes on saying, "I love you, but if we're going to make this work, you have to let go of some of this control. I can't have you questioning me every time I make a decision about my kids." There it is, plain as day. He's saying he wants things to go back to how they were, but only if I agree to back off when it comes to my daughter. He's not even trying to understand where I'm coming from. He just wants me to fall in line, to ignore the things that hurt, and accept that my daughter will always be a little bit less in his eyes. I take a deep breath, and I finally tell him, "Adam, if that's what you think a family is, then I don't think I can be part of it." He looks at me surprised, like he wasn't expecting me to actually say no. "What are you saying?" he asks, his voice softer, almost like he's worried I might actually walk away. So I tell him, as clearly as I can, I'm saying I'm done. I can't marry you if this is how it's going to be. I can't be with someone who doesn't see my daughter as part of his family. He tries to argue, saying I'm throwing everything away over one issue, but I just shake my head. I tell him it's not one issue, Adam. It's the fact that you see her as an extra, as something you're dealing with, instead of someone you want to include. He keeps trying to convince me, saying he didn't mean it that way and that I'm overreacting. But by now I'm done listening. I've spent too much time hoping he'd come around, hoping he'd understand what it means to truly blend families. And now it's clear that he just Doesn't. Finally, I get up, open the door, and tell him, I think it's best if we don't see each other anymore. I need to focus on what's best for my daughter, and that's clearly not going to happen here. He stands there for a moment, looking like he's trying to come up with something to say, but he doesn't. He just looks at me, shakes his head slightly, and walks out the door. I close it behind him, feeling this weird mix of sadness and relief. I loved him, and part of me still does, but I can't love someone who doesn't love my daughter the way she deserves. As I lock the door, I feel a sense of peace settle over me. It's not going to be easy moving forward, but at least I know I made the right decision for my daughter and me. She deserves a family that makes her feel included and valued, and if I have to create that on my own, then so be it.